Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a live presentation of SumerDaily. I am joined once again with Shawn Syed of the Stats and Scheme podcast to break down all the shenanigans in this game, Shawn, and outside of this game from the football weekend. Shawn, how you doing, brother?
Sam, I'm doing great. And as you mentioned, a lot of shenanigans. I think a lot of good stats from other games and this game. A lot of fun film, I think, that's going to come from this game. We're going to talk about some fun rule stuff and a little bit of vibes. That's what we do here. We get the stats. We watch the games. We go through a little bit of the fun there. Sam, I think that even before this game started, you sent me the text about what's going on for the Philadelphia Eagles. You see Brandon Graham making some comments about AJ Brown. I just hope that after this podcast, you don't have to, lay it out to the local radio stations about what our friendship is like behind the scenes,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep it in house, Shawn. But luckily, it's all good stuff between me and you. But unfortunately, it was not all good stuff in terms of the rules in this game. This was perhaps the most rulesy rules game of all time, Shawn. We've talked about the catch rules many times. It had a pretty big impact, it seemed like, in this game. Obviously, some bounces could have gone one way or the other, but Andre Yoshibas, it seems like he has a catch. It's ruled not a catch. It looks like a fumble. Cowboys have a lot of momentum there. How much stake do you take in that call there before I break it down using my catch rules kind of defensive player formula?
Look, I approach it from the defensive mind as well. Like, we make life so hard on defenders as is. Why don't we get the rules a little bit in favor of the defense? It's like, all right, you got to get 2 feet. You got to make a football move. What is a football move? That's obviously subjective. Sam, I mean, I have a law degree. It really feels like I'm putting it to work here. And in that, I feel like it should be like more of just a vibes-based thing where it's like we know what it catches. We know what it catches. He didn't have an initial catch. Like, it ends up there. Now, can we standardize that for a rule for every single situation? Maybe not. But Sam, we can get on the phone. They can just call us. We can be pretty quick with our response. I thought we were both immediately like, yeah, looks like a catch there. But I know that catches and non-catches are something that you are very passionate about.
Right. Going back to weeks ago, if I recall correctly, I think it was in a Bengals game, maybe it wasn't in a Bengals game, but I was so big on if the defender makes a play on the ball, you just got to give it to him. I think this play in particular was in the back of the end zone. So it was more of, a guy, I think it was ruled a catch, and the defender actually poked it out, several steps later. It seemed like they were still trying to secure a catch. This was kind of the opposite in this case because it was nowhere near the out of bounds line. Yoshibas appeared to have caught it, bobbled it, and then it was poked out after the tuck. Interestingly, it seems as if the tuck did not come before both of his feet were down after the bobble. So there's 3 series of events there. Or 4 really: the catch, the bobble, the tuck, and then the both feet getting down, and apparently the last one did not occur. I frankly, Shawn, I don't know if you've ever seen a catch where a player did not get 2 of his feet down but was nowhere near the out of bounds line. That's a new one to me. But as you said, we just got to reward these defensive players. I thought it was a great defensive play to poke the ball out regardless of what happened, and ends up being nothing, which thus leads us to another game-breaking play dealing with the rules. And that is the very, very rare blocked special teams kick punt going past the line of scrimmage, hitting a returning team's player, and then being recovered by the other team. What do you think about that, Shawn?
Sam, it's a situation where, no guts, no glory. You see the ball bounce and you go and pick it up. And obviously in that situation, now is just not the time to do it. You're able to get them into a 4th and really long. You're able to make an awesome special teams play where you can go and take a lead to maybe win that game and really, really upset the Bengals overall. It's just unfortunate. You get a weird bounce. And I think just because the way, literally the way a football is shaped, it is always going to bounce in such a weird way. So it's always safe to, whatever you have, your poison calls, your Peter calls, whatever, just get guys the heck away from the ball. Unfortunately, it goes against the Cowboys in this one. Sam, I mean, you don't even talk about the Miss Joe Burrow face mask, which I know both of us are. We do love the rules. I'm not sure. Would you say you love the rules? The rules I think are really fun. But I would love to have the ability, and I'm thinking about what are the unintended consequences. Maybe you could get a replay assist on that face mask. It feels like we've had multiple of those this year. I understand that it is currently not in that set, but it feels like the replay review is getting better and better. So I don't know. Is it going to be something where it becomes, hey, we're going to replay call and holding. That feels like that might get a little dangerous just because, we both know there's going to be holding on so many plays. There kind of is holding on every single play. I don't know if you agree with the idea that, let's get those guys to call some face masks too.
Yeah, I think there have been a lot of investments in player safety, and holding obviously does have a player safety element. I mean, even if you go back into the deep recesses of the game, when Teddy Roosevelt had a meeting of the Ivy League schools and implemented the line of scrimmage, even the line of scrimmage is in the name of player safety. But I think particular given the head and neck rules designed to prevent concussions and prevent stuff like that, I could totally see there being video assist coming up on things like horse collars, things like face masks. I also just like the video assist. I think it's a good implementation to have, and especially given that on calls, maybe less so on calls like that happen in an instant and more that have to do with the play, like a pass interference. They typically do like to get together and discuss it. I think it makes sense to have someone in their ear. I want to go back to the Leon Let It Be rule before we move on, because this is a rule that is scarred in my mind, Shawn. As a lifelong college special teams player who was on punt return, after all, I like to think I was pretty good at that. This was the biggest fear of a guy who's on the margins, like just trying to get playing time, was this exact thing happening, particularly when you have a good returner. Obviously, in this situation, it was more of a block kick, but we had a returner who's now a returner at the NFL level, Jaquan Jackson, who's in a Titans uniform now. Getting hit by the ball is an absolute fear because you want to block the entire time. So as a result, you are taught to Leon Let It Be. Leon Let, ironically a Cowboy, notorious for his poor ball handling, even though he was a lineman. The two times I think he ever touched the ball in his life, one was a fumble recovery and a big blowout Super Bowl. Someone chases him down, knocks it out of his hands. That becomes a thing where you don't want to reach the ball out over the goal line in case someone slaps it out, which we see from time to time. Zay Flowers, obviously the best example of that last year in the Baltimore game. And then the Leon Let It Be rule, which is how it was taught to me, which is if there is a kick that is blocked and it goes past the line of scrimmage, just sprint to the sideline and start high-fiving people. Do not get anywhere near the ball. I think the thing that typically gets people, and I think this is what happened today, is as a result, on the flip side of the ball, the punting team in this case are taught to sprint to the ball to try to get you to go get the ball. And that's exactly what happened. Maybe the special teams coach, informed the Bengals of that over and over again on the punt team of like, hey, if it's blocked, you got to go get it, try to get them to touch the ball, so forth and so on. But it's just crazy that in this Cowboys year that has not gone the way that we want it to go. And we'll talk about the Bengals right after this. The Bengals year that definitely hasn't gone the way they wanted it to go. This is the way this kind of breaks the Cowboys back. And depending on, if you're a tank guy, it also kind of broke the Bengals back to a little bit. But let's talk about this Bengals year kind of more in general. I thought this game was a pretty good summarization of their whole year, even down to the wacky play at the end, costing the game. Shawn, break us down this Bengals year.
Sam, it's been a tough season. I'm lucky enough to do this radio hit every week on ESPN or on ESPN in Ohio. And I come into the year, week one, you get a Patriots game where it's like, all right, Burrow's maybe not fully healthy. You're still figuring things out. Chase and Higgins, you got to get stuff figured out over there. You miss a bunch of tackles in week one. I just figure, Sam, maybe it'll get better. Unfortunately, it does not get better. Though the offense has just been rolling all year. I do think that if things were a little bit different, Joe Burrow is, we look at the Sumer Sports Pro Bowl voting coming out later this week. I certainly think that Joe Burrow will be a guy that you think of in just the light of a really positive season, which is unfortunate because they've had defensive issues from game one all the way to now that we see in so many different ways. We see it on that 4th and 1 touchdown to CeeDee Lamb, where you're in cover 0, a guy gets open before the rush gets home. We saw that versus the Commanders on the Jaden Daniels touchdown. We saw it against the Steelers where Russell Wilson's throwing a little bit of an in-breaker, where that cornerback, you're sitting in a tough spot. You're expecting a quick throw. If the offense is able to develop something deeper, you're really kind of caught off guard there. So I think it's been so many things just kind of rolling into each other where I look at both sides of the ball and you just think, what is this defense going to look like next year? Right. I think that you have to just find a way to, you're plugging holes in free agency. You're hopefully hitting on just something in the draft that can be a positive, where Trey Hendrickson is a stud. I think that's certainly a piece you can continue to build around. But really outside of that, you look just at the play, at the other positions on defense. just not good enough. Just that, like, that is it. Like, you only need to be an average defense with this type of offense. And you do not
Right.
have to be a top 5 defense. But if you're not able to even get to that sort of average, even below average, like whatever, be at like 20 or 22. But if you're at like 28, 29, 30, that has just been something that has come up over and over, where this offense is, I think it's 4 games now where they've scored 30 or more points and ended up in losses. And, it's unfortunate, because I think that both of us would really enjoy talking about this team in the playoffs, because this offense can score with anyone, even though you get a bunch of issues in this weird Cowboys game where the defense for the Cowboys thought did some fun stuff, but a really just like a despair filled year, I think, because you have this hope,
Right.
you have this thought that, oh, they can rip off this win streak, they'll be able to come back. And, unfortunately, it just never happens.
Right. And Milo, thanks for chiming in here. I'm gonna pull up your comment here. Milo thinks that Burrow has been a little bit overrated this year. I was asked this on a Kansas City hit, if he's been overrated, and I totally disagree. I think he's been underrated this year. I think he's been carrying this team. I think he's been getting hit quite a bit. I think that Higgins has been out for multiple games and he was still very productive. And I think if I could boil it down to a play in this game, Shawn, of why he does the things you have to do, especially when you have really, really good wide receivers on your team, is the touchdown, where he has throws with immense anticipation. And Mike McDaniel talks all the time about how Tua throws a yackable ball. Those guys on that team, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, we've seen, particularly this year, that they cannot get going without Tua throwing a, quote, yackable ball. Joe Burrow is the king of that. And you really see it. He's been very accurate this year, both, as the eyes tell us, as we like to say, Shawn, and by our advanced metrics here at Sumer Sports. He's had great production over expected. He's been great in our all-in-one metric. He struggled with sack avoidance, but he's always kind of struggled with that his whole career. As you mentioned, he is on my Pro Bowl list. I think he's going to be on a lot of Pro Bowl lists this year. And I still agree with you, Milo. I think Chase has had fantastic yak all season. He's performing at the best level that he's performed all year in a contract year. Higgins has been fantastic at the catch point. Totally agree with what you're seeing there. But I'm more sad that I can't see all these guys play together, especially with the rise of Chase Brown too, Shawn. What do you think about Chase Brown?
Chase Brown, and when I look at the Bengals overall, you're just looking at what pieces are you going to be able to continue to kind of push just going forward into next year. You're thinking about what is the roster going to look like? What's the receiver room going to look like overall? Chase Brown, I think, has been awesome in a few ways. Really, his burst, I think, is actually special, where he's able to get to that top speed pretty quickly. I think that Cincinnati, after you move on from Joe Mixon early in the season, Mixon has some success in Houston in that kind of week 1 game. And then people are like, oh man, the Bengals should have kept Mixon. I think that the Bengals have continued to move to that gun run game where Chase Brown is comfortable there. I think he's comfortable running under center as well, where he can really get to that top speed. He can really be a threat in the pass game. I think that he's going to be a piece that they can just continue to use moving forward in a lot of positive ways. And that makes everyone's life a little bit easier. I think if the defense actually has to respect some version of the run game, I think that that is a positive thing. Not that you have to run the ball, 25 times or anything in a game, but I think having a guy that you can trust, that can catch the ball, that can be involved in a few different ways, I think that is a real positive thing when we start to look at, what is this Bengals offense going to look like next year? Where Burrow, of course, says, the window is kind of my career. And,
Right.
in a way that's true, but in a way, this team is going to have, a bunch of steps to take, because Sam, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins next year, right? He could absolutely, I don't know, like they could break the bank, they could sign. Maybe that's just not a situation that the Bengals are often getting into. We could see him in a Patriots uniform, Sam. I don't think I would mind that one bit for my guy Drake May there, but it's just in a situation where part of it feels like a closing of an era, and part of it feels like we didn't get like a nice goodbye. Where for the Bengals overall, I keep thinking about it. It's multiple years ago now, but that game against the Rams, where it feels so far away, where you make that wild card run, you think of yourself as a team as, we're going to be back, we're going to be back, we're going to be back. And the NFL, it's just too hard. Like we think about the 49ers, they can certainly make a playoff push. They've been at the top of the conference for multiple years now. And things happen. Too many things happen, whether it's injuries, whether it's literally the bounce of a ball, whether it's turnover or luck, whether it's a blocked punt in a game. So just a kind of a tough ride, I think, for the Bengals in so many ways. But my guy Chase Brown has been a bright spot.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic, and I totally mirror your thoughts on that one. I'm really interested in what they're going to do this offseason. I think the downside of having a bunch of good players is that the cap is a cruel beast, and you have to manage those players and their salaries with your cap considerations and cash considerations, particularly in the Bengals case. Um, there's a lot of things they can do though, which is going to be very interesting, particularly if they decide what position set they want to go with in the draft, how they want to manage the Higgins situation, how they want to even maybe manage the Chase situation. We've seen guys like Tyreek Hill be traded in the past. Maybe they try to do a reconfiguration of that with all the tools at play, keeping the cash out low and moving forward with a team that maybe we don't really know. I agree with you. I think that Burrow's a pretty good quarterback. I think he is going to continue playing well, especially as we've seen this year and as we've seen when some of those guys are in and out of the lineup. I do want to highlight though the defense, man. It's just rough. Trey, like you mentioned, Trey Hendrickson played really well. I had him on my midseason All-Pro list. I'm gonna have him on my Pro Bowl team. He's now the leader in sacks. He's done very, very well pass rushing. Logan Wilson really hasn't had that bad of a year either, but they've just really struggled in coverage, Shawn. And where do you think they particularly have struggled in coverage?
I think the Bengals have struggled in coverage, one, like literally by assignment at times. And I'm watching the film this year, it feels like you're getting two guys in the exact same zone, where that can be a little bit of a teaching thing, that can be a little bit of a learning thing, that can be a little bit of an execution thing. But also, I think you can attack them in the slot, where their Bengals are not as comfortable with Hilton in the slot these days. I think when the Bengals do find ways to pressure, because they struggle to generate a pass rush with four, they want to send more bodies. When you get them in cover zero, I think you can feel comfortable against them, which is unfortunate because cover zero should be like the prime. You're not allowed to be comfortable in this kind of situation. And I mean, I've gotten asked this on that Cincinnati radio hit weekly every week. It's like, oh, do these guys look slow? Is there someone that you want to build around? It's just tough to think about what everything looks like going forward. And Sam, in your Hot Sauce Hot Takes piece, you wrote, maybe you get a little Travis Hunter there. I think that could be a fun piece. Obviously, we're just not 100% sure how the draft standings will end up. Where does Hunter, how early does he go? Can he play cornerback? Can he get you some snaps at receiver too, if you're letting Higgins go in some situation? I just really hope that they're able to make successful moves on the defensive end. And it can just be that defenses regress to the mean often, right? It is really hard to be a dominant defense every year. It's also kind of hard to be like a really poor defense every year, because your schedule, who you're playing in that way, is going to shift. Your turnover luck is probably going to shift. Obviously, turnovers are certainly a skill in certain ways, but there is a little bit of luck just in terms of who picks up the ball. Where does the ball bounce? Does it go out of bounds? So you just hope that you're able to get something going where I keep thinking about, is it you have to draft, you have to hit on draft picks because now you're paying different players where you're building that way, or really just can you get those stopgap free agents? You're not everyone's going to have our guy Zach Bond stepping in as an all-pro linebacker, but just having competent play where you can make tackles on the edge kind of consistently when teams want to run duo at you, when they want to bounce that running back outside, and you just hope that you can make those tackles. And I think that if they can, it automatically becomes a team that even in a really tough division, obviously tough conference, you're going to be able to compete, I think, relatively quickly again. But you got to hit something in the draft.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. The blueprint for the Eagles that they followed this year, I think, has to be the blueprint for the Bengals going into 2025. We joked about Zach Bond being an All-Pro, and I loved the analytics, and I thought he was playing really well. I put him in the midseason All-Pro. It now legitimately feels like he is he's a certified All-Pro at this point. I think that's just the way it's going to play out, particularly with the great success of the Eagles defense. You get another year of development from Jalen Carter, who is now an every down guy, every game offense wrecker. And then in the draft, you're able to hit on Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. And all of a sudden, you have a pretty fantastic defense that you're putting together there. I think that has to be the Bengals' way forward. Moving on from the Bengals, though, I saw kind of some stuff that I liked from the Cowboys. It's pretty barren right now. They still have some guys coming back. We did see a big play by Deron Bland coming back from that foot injury. He's kind of coming back slowly, one could say. We're starting to see kind of what we saw from last year. We saw some couple good plays from Diggs as well, even though Chase was able to kind of do what he wanted all game. I'm really highlighting that offensive line. As I was going through some of the metrics this week, I've noticed that a couple of other guys have started to pop up as guys who are doing a fantastic job blocking. Tyler Smith in particular, as we've kind of seen Rico Dowdle be able to be a little bit more featured in this offense. Cooper Rush, obviously a backup level quarterback. Is there anything that you see that can be built upon going into next season, Shawn, from the Cowboys?
I mean, I still am a firm believer in Dak Prescott. I really think that you can build an offense around him. You have been able to build successful offenses around him. I think that if you continue to get just positive play on the offensive line, you're able to continue to work with all 5 of those pieces. That's something you can build around. I'm interested. Is it Rico Dowdle that is able to emerge and continue to play running back at just like a decent level? Is it bringing in a second receiver? I wonder just what the offense is going to look like, who's going to call it, what are the structures going to be overall, because I think over time, we think about on the opposite side for the Bengals, like Bengals had a different offensive coordinator. I do feel like the offense looks relatively similar because at a certain level, your offense is going to be your quarterback. It's going to be the way that your quarterback wants it. We talked about Philadelphia. The offense, in a way, looks similar over 3 offensive coordinators. I think that could be the same in Cincinnati. I think that could be the same in Dallas. Of course, from Kellen Moore to McCarthy, you're part of that same tree. You have just a lot of similar ideas, similar concepts, similar way to run those concepts. You're going to get that. I would like to just see like an injection of not necessarily newness, but I think because Dak Prescott, I feel so confident in the way that he plays the position. You can put so much on his plate, but like let's not just have it be like double slants to both sides, or slant flat one way and double slants kind of to the backside. I think you find different ways to expand and kind of continue to prove on Prescott just as a passer, where you can get an extra target. Like, please, one more target outside of just CeeDee Lamb, or even though I think Brandon Cooks has been playing well in a few different ways. On the defensive end, I'm really bummed by that Overshawn injury. I think he is so fast. Like he is really, really fast. I think in that week 1 game with that, they really just like took down the Browns. I was really high on the Cowboys after that game because they really showed it in that game coming in where you look at 2 teams that maybe you feel like these are going to be teams with strong seasons. Obviously, you haven't turned out in that sort of way. So when I look at the team overall, I don't necessarily like place a ton of blame at Mike Zimmer's feet. I don't think you get a bunch of injuries on the defensive line, but like you have Michael Parsons. Hopefully Overshawn's able to get healthy. You have, I think, solid cornerbacks. I think overall on both sides of the ball, you can still build it up. It's just unfortunate you're in the NFC East now, where it feels like the Eagles are built for of the long term. You feel like now the Commanders are there and built for the long term. And I think that even wherever the Giants are, they're going to have a draft pick where they're hoping to kind of turn it around pretty quick. So I do think maybe there's a long road ahead for the Cowboys, but certainly a lot of pieces I think that you feel confident about in parts, but now you want to put it together and create a strong whole.
Great analysis there, Shawn. We got love coming in from White Noise Sports for you as well. As always,
it's our Eagles fan, Sam.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Oh, hey, it's a little Eagles talk coming up right now. As always, you can find Shawn Syed at the Stats and Scheme podcast. But let's break away from this game, Shawn, and let's get into our Eagles. All of a sudden this week, and again, given last week, there was discussions about maybe George Kittle wasn't happy about Brock Purdy. Ends up being nothing. They end up having a pretty good game this week. But this seems to be a recurring event, and I think it may be proved prescient as the year goes on, because it seems as if there's real problems with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. Not to get in the gossipy part, we know that you watch every single Eagles snap, Shawn. Have you seen anything that kind of shows that on the field?
The Eagles situation is extremely interesting. I do the Ringers Philly special with Sheil Kapadia every week. We'll be recording tomorrow night. I think when you look at there's just like a lot of important factors. You're looking at a team that has won 9 straight games, Sam. They're 11-2. They're going to cruise to the win in the NFC. They're going to walk into the 2 seed. In any other situation, they have a top 5 defense. In any other situation, they have a top 10 rushing offense. I would say top 3 rushing offense. So many parts of this team is so great. The one part that it really is a sticking point is just the passing offense. And when I've watched across all of their games, the individual ingredients, you see them sprinkled into every game. Like you get a game where I feel confident about the way that it's just drawn up, where Kellen Moore is really prioritizing AJ Brown. You're using him in unique ways to get him open. I see sprinkles of some middle of the field passing. I see a little bit of under center play action. I see Hurts going through his reads at times. I see Hurts, comfortably cutting the ball loose and really pushing the ball at certain times. It's just, you don't see all of those things together in the same game. And look, if I'm AJ Brown, like when I watched the film for this week so far, there are times when AJ Brown is open. Now, if it's like, if you only take that in context, yeah, I would be mad too. But there's also Hurts' rush. Hurts has multiple hands in his face, or Hurts has to get off his read in a certain way. And Hurts did not play a perfect game. I don't want to pretend like it is that in any sort of way. But it's more that, like, I understand why AJ Brown is frustrated. There is additional context there. I understand why Jalen Hurts is frustrated at himself. I mean, he said as much in his press conference. I think that unfortunately, you get the Brandon Graham WIP kind of snippet where he says, I don't think he was necessarily talking directly about, like, oh, their friendship, but like the clip that comes out of it is like, oh, these guys aren't friends anymore. And then Tim McManus from ESPN immediately followed up with Brandon Graham. Graham kind of issued like not a little bit of a correction, like a little bit of extra context. It's just crazy to think, like, this team last week, Sam, you could have convinced me this was the best team in the league. And right. I do think that they have aspects of them that, like, these are Super Bowl caliber pieces. It's just, unfortunately, that passing offense is not fully put together. And in the modern NFL, like, that is going to come up. It just is going to come up against the Panthers, who both of us have felt like Bryce Young has moved in the right direction. That organization as a whole over the last few weeks, you have to feel good about them. Like, you just have to on the offensive end, at the interior offensive line. Love Chuba Hubbard, what's going on over there. But in that game, the Panthers, they shrank the heck out of the game. I think you're looking at 8 possessions total. So that makes every single time that ball leaves Jalen Hurts' hands, it's just so much more important. And they do not pass the ball. And they probably shouldn't, because they've had, I think, 7 games this season where they've been more efficient running the ball than passing the ball, which is hilarious. I mean, Sam, you get your stats degree, and it's like, oh, well, like, we're supposed to say that passing is always more efficient than running. Let me tell you, not for the Philadelphia Eagles in every single game. So it's I guess it's beautiful for content, but frustrating to kind of watch them all the time. I know I have a lot of Eagles fans just in my DMs kind of just frustrated with the direction of the passing game. But again, all the parts happen at different points, like across different games. Like, I think of that throw over the middle between linebackers against the Ravens. I think of the different ways that you're getting AJ Brown sort of on the move early in the season. It's just, that has to come together. It really, really does. I'm just not sure when I look at the Lions of the NFC, when I look at the Vikings, when I even look at the Packers, where, of course, the Eagles beat the Packers. The Eagles should feel confident, I think, going into every single one of those matchups. Even against the Lions, I think they should feel decent about it. At this point, it looks like if you play them, you're going to be on the road. And it's just thinking about, if you have 2 early third downs where they just do not score on their first 2 drives, that's just not something they do, where they're 32nd in EPA per drive on those first 2 drives, and then I think 2nd through the rest of the way. If you're not able to do that in the playoffs, I think that just becomes an unfortunate way to maybe end your season, where it is really a special season for this Eagles team. Again, the defense is ridiculous, like really, really ridiculous. Even where the Panthers were able to move the ball, it's not like it was super easy on them. It's not like you just have these wide open guys. You take a bunch of Bryce Young plays where Bryce is just playing out of his mind, kind of on his own end zone in the pocket. So I really just hope they figure it out. Not just because I do that podcast every week, but also because, like, from a narrative perspective, you want to see AJ Brown, who is an awesome receiver, continue to have opportunities. You want to have Jalen Hurts able to just play at a high level. And my guy, Devontae Smith, the guy doesn't complain about anything. Give my guy Devontae Smith the ball. I put up just a nice clip of the All-22 of him just running a sick kind of sail route where he's selling the over inside first before breaking out. Just an awesome route runner. So all these awesome individual pieces. Run game is really good. Pass defense, rushing defense. But that passing offense is the last piece. And it's crazy to think, like, you are in we're going into week 15 now, and you're still kind of figuring it out, but you have that many wins. So it doesn't feel like a fraudulent team to me, really, in any way. I do feel like just really, really positive about the Eagles overall. Got one big thing that you need to figure out still.
Right. And I do not think this is the same situation as last year, where the bottom kind of fell out. And as the bottom was falling out, all of these stories were beginning to come out. The primary reason I think it's different, one, we can say Saquon Barkley. I'm notoriously sticky on my belief that it's probably not as much Saquon as that offensive line is just absolutely killing it. In the Pro Bowl list that we're putting together, my votes included 3 of the 5 starting linemen for the Eagles. I think yours was very similar to mine, Shawn. The real difference is the defense. Last year, the defense was sketch at best. This year, the defense is for real and has talent at all 3 levels of the defense. So I'm less worried. I think the bottom could fall out of the passing game, and I still think they'd be able to, as you mentioned with the Panthers, they'd still be able to shrink the game. They'd still be able to get push along that offensive line. Saquon Barkley would, as he has done, find the holes, and the defense would be able to cause problems, particularly up front with Jalen Carter up the middle. Shawn, before we let you go, what were some of your favorite moments of this football weekend?
Sam, you ask me these direct questions. I could give you direct answers. Of course, I'm just not gonna do that. I got to give you multiple things here where you could mention, the Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, the absolute laser show going on. I mentioned Chuba Hubbard. I do think that's which is one of my favorite things just overall, just through this season. He could talk about the Simpsons broadcast, which I thought it was quite good. And I just think that, of course, you know me, I want to see that wide all 22 angle live that Prime Vision kind of used to have. Now they're going to a more behind the quarterback view, but like the combination of, you get the tracking chips, you get the computer vision. It's really cool to see what they've done with technology overall. And look, whatever gets more people into the sport, I think that's better, right? More people that can talk about this, more people that want to watch, more people that want to I think continue to learn more, whatever your path in, whether it's scheme, whether it's stats, whether it's anything in between. So I thought that was enjoyable. But look, I have to give it to my guy, Sam Darnold, because I think that Darnold is having a really good season. And you can say whatever you want about it's an awesome situation, like a really, really good situation. The situation I would want to play quarterback in if I was in the NFL, where you, of course, have Justin Jefferson. Of course, you have Jordan Addison. You have TJ Hawkinson. You have a bookend right tackle. They lose Christian Darris on the left side early. You make a trade for a tackle. You're just finding ways kind of on the offensive line. You, of course, have Aaron Jones. Kevin O'Connell is really almost the biggest, well, probably not more than Jefferson, but like Kevin O'Connell is such an important piece to me. It feels like he's a coach of the year candidate, and he should be, because I talk about the Eagles passing game, where I love that for the Vikings passing game, it is so clear. Like, Jefferson is a primary on every single play. The offense knows that. The defense knows that. Jefferson knows that. The cornerback knows that. The safety that's helping over Jefferson knows that. But still, you're finding ways to get Jefferson open. Whether it's, you're in a stack, you bump that motion out, you know that DB is going to expand a little bit with Jefferson. Jefferson's going to push you outside, and then he's going to cut inside. So you find so many ways to do that. And then you use his gravity in ways to just open up Jordan Addison, where the guy will beat you one-on-one. Just like no questions asked, you can make that throw easily. And in the game against the Falcons, I mean, there were some throws that were like the ball's up in the air, the DBs are falling over themselves. It ends up in a Vikings hand for a touchdown. Like, those aren't even throws I want to talk about. And they use a ton of play action, as you should. I think that's a good thing. But there were a bunch of Darnold throws, no play action, no like funky clip on the TV reel where some guy is slipping over himself. Just like beautiful, like adult drop back pass game for Darnold doing that. And to me, there is this trust where I don't know always how to quantify it, but Darnold is going to throw the ball down the field no matter what. No matter if he threw 5 touchdowns or if he threw 5 interceptions. KOC is going to call those shot plays, whether they're up 49 or whether they're down 49. So it feels like at this point, and I mean, Darnold, like I said, he's going to throw it like Jefferson's down there somewhere. It's like that to the nth degree where they just continue to do it. And I think that makes them super threatening in the playoffs. I think in the early part of the season, we looked at the offense and said, oh, are they going to be able to kind of win some of these games where the defense isn't able to just get a bunch of turnovers? Get a really good situation last week where at the end of the game, Darnold's able to come back from down multiple scores. I think that overall, the Vikings are a team that you just don't want to run into. Like, you do not want to have to game plan for this defense. You don't want to have to deal with Sam Darnold pushing the ball down the field. And, they could be that Darnold just goes full pumpkin. You get a 4 interception game when it matters the most. But at this point, like, give me that week 18 Vikings-Lions game as soon as possible, Sam.
Certainly. And I think the NFC is kind of heating up here. We've talked about the NFC North all year. As you mentioned, Eagles look good, but the Eagles are interesting. The Vikings look great, but the Vikings have pretty big holes at the defensive corner positions in particular. The Packers took an L against the Lions, but they look pretty interesting. And now we have the Rams catching absolute fire, as they tend to do at the end of the year. Their defense is a little sketchy. So there's a lot to talk about in the NFC. And I think that's going to lead us to another fantastic week of football. Shawn, thank you for ending it with me on Monday Night Football tonight. Again, he is Shawn Syed. He's absolutely cooking over on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Stats and Scheme podcast. Please, please, please go subscribe to that and check out at Syed Schemes. He does one of my favorite things. He will do it. He will come to you, service with a smile. He'll clip up his articles. You can go read them on Twitter, and then you can click that link and get all the great information that he is imparting to you at sumersports.com. Shawn, thank you for joining me. He's Shawn Syed. I'm Sam Brookhouse, signing off from Sumer Sports. Thank you for listening.